Hey everybody, Dave here again, and I am really excited about this one particular video, and it's because I am creating my first ever component to give away for free for the entire community. And one of the things that's neat about this component that I'm creating, I'm calling it Daves Toolbox. And so up here in GitHub, where I've been putting all of the videos, instead of doing a sequential video 1, 2, 3, I've called this one out specifically Daves Toolbox. I'll continue to create videos as video 4, 5, 6, and so on, but we'll leave this Daves Toolbox out here. So right now, as of the recording of this video, I only have the one component. I also was working on another component, but because there was a bug in the way that it works on the platform, I couldn't do it. I was going to do a people picker, and like I said, it works, but it's, for some reason, the combination of a combo box and the Office 365 connector, it kept resetting the fields that you use to search on as well as the fields to display on. It would go from display name and go back to city, and when you tried to do it into a component, it absolutely did it 100% of the time. Although if you made any changes on the screen or to the settings of any of the fields, it would reset all of that anyway. So there's definitely a bug going on as of the date of this recording, and so I wasn't able to componentize that one. But the people picker will be part of Dave's Toolbox in the future. So let me show you how this thing works. If you didn't see video number 3, this is going to build on this one, that one. And so what I did is I created this Azure upload component thing for the blob storage, and it was really more about Fusion development, but I was like, you know, this would make a pretty good component. It's not the best looking piece or app in the world, but my goal here is to inspire people to kind of kick things up a notch, take it to the next level. I do a lot of consulting in my day job at Concentrix Catalyst with internal folks as well as customers. And one of the things that I do is I run into, in talking to people, that I hear, in other words, the things that I look at, I don't see people using components a whole lot. I think I've run into maybe 2 developers that use them, but by and large, the majority people just don't use it. And I think it's an absolutely fantastic thing to use these component libraries, which, by the way, is replacing components inside of Canvas apps. Everything is moving out towards component libraries. So in any event, what I did is I created a component, and then I put it in a solution, because you can't export these and you can't import them directly. But you can create a solution. I'll just go into this demo solution just for a real quick demo. And what you can do, is you can add existing component libraries. And so you can also, import, export, whatever, through these solutions here, which is all part of ALM anyway. So all things considered, that's actually pretty good. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to import my solution, which is called Daves Toolbox again. I'm going to come down here to Downloads. I'll go into the folder, and in that folder I have this zip file. Now in that folder I also have, let's get this going, and I'll show you into the folder, because I have an Excel spreadsheet in there, and I'll talk through that while we're waiting for this to upload. So here we are over in Daves Toolbox. We'll go into here, and now I have a zip file, which is the solution. And you'll see that there's this file, records XLS. The reason I put this in here is because inside of this solution I have 2 things. I have a table, a Dataverse table, and inside of the solution I also have my component library, which again only has the one component as of right now. And so the reason I included this in here, this Excel spreadsheet, is so that you can go up to, and while we're still waiting for this to go, I'll show you that you can come over here to SharePoint. I'll pick the correct library so that I can get into the library that I use for my labs. And then from here we can go into create a new, in this instance it's going to be a new list, but I'm going to create the list from an Excel spreadsheet. So we'll just click list, we'll click from Excel, you'll upload the file, we'll go into Daves Toolbox again, And so what it'll do is it'll, upload and look at everything that's in here and essentially create a SharePoint list out of it. Now, the one thing I will tell you is, you're going to have to go through each one of these fields and kind of figure out how to, how you want to set these up. I definitely don't, you're going to see there's a big problem here with a lot of these fields, the way it tries to figure it out. Almost every field in here should probably be a single line of text or just a text line. So the ID, technically you don't need that one. The PID, you definitely do not want that as title, so you just leave that as single line of text. Is folder is technically a Boolean, which is going to be true or false. Also just do single line of text. The display name, honestly, this one could probably be a title. Now, for those of you that know SharePoint, you also know that there needs to be at least one column in here that has the title. So doing the display name is probably a good idea to set that as title. And then this should be single line of text. This should be single line of text. Basically everything is single line of text. So you'll go through and just go through the entire rigmarole here. Everything's single line of text. Last modified. This one I should tell you it's date and time. And then size, single line of text. Actually, you know what, we can make this a number. That is good. All right, so anyway, so size is number, the last modified date time, everything else, single line of text. I chose, if this was me, I would choose display name as title. You could also use name, but display name is the friendly, pretty name. So I would use that. That would make a lot of sense to me. You can choose whatever you'd like and flesh this out, but just know that when you're using Azure Blob Storage and you create, or upload rather, a document, if you capture it inside of a variable, it returns you a bunch of values for the file that you submit to the blob storage. And all of this is metadata that you're going to use to capture off what you're sending up there as a file. And so the idea or the premise here is that whatever table you want to upload or attach files to, this table essentially is going to hold the information about the, the actual file itself and whatever you're linking it to. So if it's a contact record, the parent ID would be, whatever the ID column is in that parent table. This is why this is PID, for parent ID. And so this is really, really flexible. So you can do this as a SharePoint list. It's included in the solution, as I had mentioned earlier, with a table. And so now that we have Daves Toolbox solution, we can actually go into the solution and I can show you that. And so you'll see that there is a table and you'll see that there is a component library, and you can see that here illustrated under the type column. So nothing super, super fancy to see there. So now the next thing I need to tell you, in order to get this to work properly, if you don't already have something like this set up, you're going to need to create a connection. Okay, so let's come over here to connections, and what we want is Azure Blob Storage. And so if you don't have one here, you're going to need to create one. So I don't really have one here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click New Connection. Now, I've been using this, so obviously it's at the top, but if it wasn't at the top for you, come over here in the search box and just type in Azure Blob, right? And so that's enough text to narrow it down. And just go ahead and click on it. And so you'll go ahead and you'll click on this, or try to click on it. I've clicked on it twice now. I don't know if anything's happening, but maybe I come over here and just click on the plus. This has been acting funky all day for me. I've been getting weird things going on. So I'm going to refresh the screen. Maybe we can get it to work again. Connections, new connections, blob storage. Okay, here it comes. I don't know. Had to refresh the screen. Something weird going on with my Chrome browser. So all you need is two pieces of information. You need the account name and you need the storage access key. Now, let me kind of break this down a little bit too. So the access key is probably the most flexible way. You can lock it down with Azure AD integrated, and that'll give you a little bit more fine granular control. If you're not sure how to use Azure Blob Storage or configure it, have your network administrator or your Azure administrator set this up for you. But as a general rule of thumb, to make it available to almost anybody inside of your company without having to do a bunch of extra steps, I would set it up with the key, access key, and I'll show you how to do that here. So there's a couple different ways. with Azure Blob Storage, you can download this Windows application called Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer, and this will give you visibility into all of your storage accounts. So the one that we're using here is this DS app files, and so if I come down here and click on it, down here in the lower left corner, I can click on this other tab called Properties, and then from there I can just go into here, click on it. I can do Control C to copy it. I can come back out here to do Control V. And then the other thing I can do is to get the key, I can just right click over here and choose Copy Primary Key, come back over here and put Control V to paste my key into here. The other thing before I hit save and go away from this that I wanted to show you is that if I come over here to Actions, I can open this up in the portal. So this should open me up into a new tab without destroying everything. So let me go ahead and quickly create this so I can get this behind me. So this has gone in and created. So now I have my Azure Blob Storage connection established, which is we're going to need to fix something in a minute, but I wanted to show you how to deal with this on the Azure Portal in case you don't have this Storage Explorer application installed locally. So from the portal, to do this inside of the portal, first thing you can do is you can double click on this right here to copy out the name, and then come down here to where it says access keys, and the same thing, you should be able to click show, Control A to copy the key. Also you can copy it, the storage account name here, but in any event, I don't know if you show it, if you'll be able to copy it. I don't want to show it for obvious reasons, but in any event, just come here to get the key and you can paste it in there. So that's how you deal with that. Okay. Oh, and I think I mentioned this already. Yeah, I did mention this. Sorry. All right. So what do we need to do now? Okay. So with this blob storage connector in there, the next thing that we need to do is come over here to Apps. Let's go over to the component libraries, and we see that Dave component toolbox is here. Now I will give a word of caution. When you're importing this from a solution, because I've been rambling and blah, 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 there's been enough time that has passed. For you, you're going to move much quicker than what I'm showing here in the video, and you may be inclined, as soon as it imports, you're going to jump right over here and try to get into this thing. And then lo and behold, you're going to be like, oh my God, where is the component that I just uploaded? Because more than likely, this is going to be your first component. And if it is, just be patient, wait about 5 to 10 minutes, like you saw that, I've been rambling on for about 5 minutes or 10 minutes now. That gives enough time for it to wind up showing up. But it will show up definitely and eventually, but for me, I've seen it about 5 to 10 minutes. All right, anyway, so with that being said, I'm going to select it. I'm going to come in here, and we need to edit it. And the reason that we need to edit it, and I wish Microsoft would put a higher emphasis on fixing this or rolling this out. I did see it in their roadmap, but I'm of the opinion that every Canvas app, every flow, every model-driven app should have connection references working, because as you do ALM and you move things from environment A to environment B, if you had connection references set up in there, all you have to do is just repoint the connection reference to the existing connector, and as long as it's shared out, life is good. And in order to do that, when you're building the app, you don't use the connection anymore. You need to just use the connection reference. And there's only a handful of connectors that work like that with connection references, and it's usually from Power Automate. Unfortunately, Power Automate out of the entire suite seems to be the only item within the entire platform that seems to get a lot of the advanced features quicker than the other applications. But in any event, good news is it is on the roadmap. So just kind of hang tight, be patient, and then until that's ready, we're just going to have to deal with these kinds of workarounds. So I didn't want to leave the connection in here and then have it tell you that you need to email me to get the connection working, because obviously you don't work and you're not on the same tenant as me, so it wouldn't make much sense. So the easiest thing to do was to simply just have you come over here to data and add the connection, and that's why we added that connection earlier. So come down here to connectors, find Azure Blob Storage. It does need to have the name just as you see it. So I'm going to go and import it like that, and you notice all these errors except for the one, and that one is normal and natural, and it's by design because we're in a component right now, and it's expecting a value to be pushed in, but because it's inside of a component, we don't have it. So this error is normal. What I wanted to tell you, though, is that if you have multiple Azure Blob Storage accounts configured and you're configuring, maybe another one for this particular component, I went ahead and used this very specific name in the component. And rather than you having to dissect the entire component and go through all of the properties, then, another way of dealing with this is come over here, copy like you just saw. So I went in here, did the rename, and I'll do a Control X and a Control V. So I copied and pasted it right back into itself. But the reason for that is if you come over here and use the search, if you weren't familiar or if you never used this tool, this will show you everywhere in this component where I have referenced this particular item. So what you can do is you can rename or replace this, syntax throughout the entire component, and you can replace it with maybe your name. So maybe it's something like, 33 or something like that. Who knows? But just wanted to let you know you can do a quick find or a quick find and replace if you need to do it. But the main important point or takeaway is it needs to say, just as I show here, Azure Blob Storage, because that's what it's expecting. All right, now just what we need to do is save, and we need to publish, and our component is ready to be used and inherited by all of our applications. And the really cool thing is we'll be able to do some pretty neat stuff with it. All right, so this looks like it is done. Just going to go ahead and leave. And now we're going to create a new Canvas application, two-screen app, to make this or try to keep this as simple as possible. So I'm going to call this example, EXAMPLE. If I don't say it out loud, I won't be able to type it because I can't talk and type at the same time. All right. So this is now here. Now the first thing I always do for good measure, and I always like to reference this again and again and again as a tip, always make sure you save your Canvas app as soon as you get into it, because it will not auto save for you until you do the first initial save. I don't know how many times I've gotten myself burnt by making a bunch of work, it crashes, or I accidentally hit back too many times and got out of it and then lost all my work. So do that a couple of times yourself and you'll learn the same hard lessons that I learned, and you'll be telling everybody that you know too. All right, so with that being said, we are now done. We're ready to move on. I'm going to create an additional screen, and let's put this screen in here as home screen. We'll rename this screen to file upload. Okay, so now that I have this information here, we need to add some connections to the app. So we're going to add two Dataverse tables. The first one is the contact table. And then we're going to circle back and we're going to add that table that's in Daves Toolbox called File Records. And so this is the parent table that we're going to be dealing with. And what we want to do is, for context, we may want to upload applications, or W-9, I-9, Social Security cards, copies of driver's license, anything that we need secure. But maybe the contact is of type employee, and so you need to make sure that any files that you store aren't stored maybe in Dataverse, isn't stored in SQL. You don't want it floating around OneDrive, and you certainly don't want it floating around a SharePoint library, so you want it to be locked up as secure as you can get it. And Azure Blob Storage is a really good, secure way of doing that. It's not the only thing or the only way, and SharePoint, to be all honest, with some configuration, you can absolutely lock it down too as well. But trying to give you guys a flood of different options to use in your tool belt as you move forward. All right, so we've got these two connectors here. I feel like I'm missing, oh yeah, we got to bring our component in. So we click the little plus button, and down here, buried way at the bottom, this Get More Options component, lower left corner of the screen if you don't see where my mouse is. And I'm going to click this, and I'll be able to spin open Daves Component Toolbox. And we're going to pick the only lonely component that's in there all by himself. And so now this will bring in that component, and I'll have access to it. And we'll go back to the second screen that I added, and we're going to add that component to that screen. So that's been imported. Here's the library. Let's go back to tree view. Okay, I do have the file upload screen. come back here again, spin open the library component, which it is, and I'm going to attach my component. So there is my component. I'm good to go with that now. I do need to make a configuration, but before I do, I need to go to the home screen. Let me get over here to the tree view again. Come out to the home screen. We're going to insert a gallery. We'll do a blank. We're going to choose contacts as our data source. And then for the fields, actually let's change the layout to title, subtitle. And then for the fields, as opposed to using email for subtitle, I'm going to use something in the table called external ID. And so this is actually part of Dataverse. This isn't something that I did. It's called external user identifier. I've used the field before in Dataverse, so this is really helpful when you're bringing in records, say from Salesforce or CRM or some other tool that's out there. And essentially what you want to do is keep the original ID number from the source or authoritative source table that it's coming in from, because Dataverse will add its own special, ID field as well. So this is a reference to that, and I just wanted to keep it real simple, so we're just using like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's unique. No rows are repeated with the same number, so it is a unique ID, and it's just quite simple, but it helps to illustrate what we've got going on here. All right, so with this being said, the next thing that I need to do is adjust this little chevron, and we're going to set up an on-click event to navigate. So we're going to navigate over to the file upload screen, and we want to set a transition of none. And the reason we want to set it to none is because we actually need to set a context variable. And in order to set a context variable, we're going to go in and just pass in a record. And in this instance, I'm going to call this, I'm just going to use the acronym for external ID, so EID. And that's going to be the name. And then the value is going to be this item dot EX, there we go, external user ID. So what that means is we're going to pass along essentially a variable called EID, and the value for this variable, because again this is key value, it's a record, is going to be either 1, 2, or whatever the row is that I've selected on. When I click this little chevron, it's going to pass in this EID, or this external user ID number. Okay, so that is now set. I should be able to hold my Alt key down, and we'll pick, what is this, A. McRonald here. So that's number 4, and lo and behold, here it is, added files for PID record pound text. Well, the reason that this isn't working as expected is because we have to click the component, and then, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to rename this component called com. P-A-C-H, com attach. Okay. And I am going to, with the component still selected, I'm going to choose the PID. This was the custom property that I set up. It's an input property. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in that context value of EID. So the parent ID, that's what PID stands for, is equal to the external ID from the context table. And so now with that being said, this is now wired up. You now see that add files for parent ID record number 4. So now we know with this visual indicator that we in fact are getting a good wiring up of the information. So now the next thing that we need to do is actually do something with this. So the component, here's what the component's going to do, right? So we can hold the Alt key down, and I'll just go over into pictures, and I'll just pick any old picture here. We'll pick this guy. And now I'll, with the Alt key still held down, I'll click Save the Blob. So that's everything that this thing does, right? The component just uploads to Azure, but it brings back a bunch of data. And so one of the things that we can see here, I'll just pop a table on the up on the screen here. Now you don't have to do this, but I just want to illustrate this. So this is called com. What did we call I renamed the component. So com attach dot. And so one of the things that this component does is it returns a record. So the return files metadata. This is a table that gets returned from the component. And so now with that being said, I should be able to pick the fields. And so when you go ahead and submit the information to Azure, what's happening inside of the component is it's picking up all of the information, the metadata, that the action is essentially returning back. So all of this information has to do with the file that I just uploaded, which is that emp something PNG. So if I come over here to the Storage Explorer and I click refresh, I have a folder called number 4, and the reason it's number 4 is because the PID is number 4. If I would have chosen on the contact screen PID 50, then this would have been created with a folder called 50. So just to let you know that you don't have to put everything into root. I highly suggest you don't. That way, at least if somebody from IT needs to go and dig through here, there's somewhat plain English ways of finding around what's what. Or one side of support can let the other side of support, hey, I need you to go into Azure Storage, I need you to go into folder, I don't know, XYZ, and I need you to bring me a copy of all of those files. So there is another way of at least trying to get through it. But if you got everything all jammed up out here in the root, you're not going to have any clue what this thing belongs to. So keep good housekeeping skills. You don't have to worry about it because the component already does it for you. So if you leave it the way that it's configured, it'll just work this way out of the box. So in any event, I'm going to get rid of this table because I don't need it at this particular point in time. So again, the component, I can add another file if I so choose, and I'll have 2 rows in the table. And so I'll go ahead and I'll upload this into the blob storage. Again, I'm holding the Alt key down while I'm doing all this so I don't have to hit play. But now I've got 2 rows in this record, and if I go back over into this number 4 table, you'll see I have these 2 files that I uploaded to Azure Storage. And so as a result of that, now what I need to do is I need to save that table or that metadata into that table that I included in Dataverse with this component, so that we have now a linkage of all of the metadata for the files as well as the contact table that's also in Dataverse. And so between the 2 tables, they worked really good hand in hand together. And so one of the things that I can do with this is I can download the file here by either clicking the name or clicking the download file. And so that's very helpful. And so I've got a bunch of different code or scripts written here. So one of the things too that I want to do is there's this thing called reset. So the component itself can be reset, and we definitely need to reset the component. So back over here in Tree View, if I come over here to the screen name, File Upload, the onVisible property, what I want to do is I want to paste in this reset attach. So this is, again, the name of the component is called attach. And on the File Upload screen on Visible, I'm saying every time this screen is visible, I want you to reset the component. And so inside of the component, when this is triggered, what happens is it wipes out the collection. Because if you're coming in here for PID number, I don't know, 52 or 3 or 5 or any other 1 and 4, this won't make any sense. And contextually, it's bad. It's going to cause a problem. So again, we need to reset the component, and this is how you do it. The next thing that we need to do is we need to add a button so that we can save the data to the table. Okay, so we'll hit save, or we'll just name it save. And so now what we need to do is change or adjust the onSelect property. Now I've already got this code typed out so that we don't have to make the video impossibly longer than it needs to be. So I'm just going to copy all of this up here. I'll just copy and paste this in, and then we can talk about what this thing is and does. All right, so the first thing I'm doing is I'm using a for all loop, because again, the com attachment has a property where it returns a table. And so I'm saying for all rows in that table, I want you to go row by row by row. And what do I want you to do in each of the rows? I want you to patch the file records table. Again, this is the table that came with the component. And then I'm saying I'm going to create a new record. So this is what this default is, and I'm going to create the new record inside of this file records table, which again is inside of the component solution. And then what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, what is the name of the column that's inside the file record table? And then I'm going this record, and this record indicates the row for the table that's being returned by the component. So hopefully all of this makes sense for you guys and you are familiar with patch statements. If not, this may be a little over your head. There's a bunch of videos online. There's a bunch of documentation about how to use patch. If you guys would like me to make a video on patch, then I'll do that, but I need to have some comments in the comment box below so that I know what it is you guys are interested in. But here's something of quite interesting. So even though for all of the record column values, I'm passing in this record dot whatever it is that's in this table, this is the only exception to the rule. In the table, I need to make sure that the PID column, again inside the file records table, is equal to the parent record that I'm working with. So remember, we passed it in contextually from the home screen to this screen, and this is why I'm not using this record. This is just like a variable, right? It's available at the screen level, and I'm still on this screen, so I can access it, and as a result, I can then patch it in there. So this will always then bind the particular contact, in this case contact number 4 with the external ID number 4, to all of the files that I have uploaded in this session on this screen. And then the last thing I'm doing here is I'm navigating back to the home screen with a transition of none, but I'm also passing along a context variable. This is optional. You do not need to do this. This is not necessary to do this. I just wanted to show you that it is possible to do this and what you can do with it. So for example, if I go ahead and hold the Alt key down and hit save, then the dancing ants at the top happened and that gets flashed out to the home screen. Okay, so I'm going to add another table, and this time I'm going to reference for other items that object that I just passed in from the file upload screen that we just came from, and I think it was called return value table. Yep. And so now I can add in all of the different fields that I want. I'll choose display name. That's the only column, and maybe size. So we'll come down here and do that. So now we have 2 tables here, and we should have the 2 rows. And these are the 2 rows that supposedly I patched to the database. And I say supposedly because we haven't checked the database to make sure that the records are there, but this is still all floating around in memory. So now what we should do is go out and check the table. So I'm going to go into the environment. So if we come back over here, we're in environment, David Soden's environment. So we'll come back over to here, and we'll make sure we change into the environment. And I don't have to because it's already there, so that's good news. We'll come down here to Dataverse. We'll come down to Tables. And here's a cool trick on the new interface. I really love this new interface that they've done here. Absolutely, in my opinion, fantastic. So one of the things you do is click on Custom, and I've only have one custom table that I've created, and that was what you're going to get when you import my solution. So you just click on this, and so when you go into it, the first thing you do is get front and center. I should have 2 rows of data right here, and I do. I have 2 rows of data. So in here is all of the pieces of or all of the columns. You can go through here, click more, and start choosing what you want to show, but lo and behold, that patch statement was able to patch those records into there. So here's the beautiful part. I have 2 tables in Dataverse, one holding the metadata from the connection, and all of my files, and the connection is the one to Azure Storage. All of my files are in Azure Storage. Right now they're hot and furred. I can change the configuration on this to basically go to the lower tier for the access tier, because right now this is the maximum amount, and honestly it's pretty cheap to begin with. But if you want to lower the cost even more, well, you can change your access tier. It may not be as snappy, but you can change the access tier there as well. So in any event, I think that is enough for this video, how to use the component, how to kind of get acclimated. If you have any questions, leave comments in the comment box, rewind, watch the video a couple of times if you need to make sure that you get the component up and running. And as always, thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.